The neighborhood was a tapestry of manicured lawns and uniform houses, each a replica of the next, a testament to a certain kind of suburban conformity. It was universally placid, serene in a way that seemed almost unnatural, yet beneath this tranquil surface, tensions simmered, subtle and silent as a shadow slipping through twilight. I had moved here a few months ago, seeking quiet after years in a city that never knew how to hush. My uncle had left me his house, a vintage gem slightly out of sync with its modern neighbors, and a small bridge that he had lovingly built over the creek in the backyard. It was a simple thing, just wide enough for a person to cross, with handrails fashioned from weathered wood. It stood as a testament to his craftsmanship and a conduit to my childhood memories. Karen, the newly elected Homeowners Association president, was the kind of leader who clung to rules as if they were life rafts in a choppy sea of chaos. Her eyes were sharp, constantly scrutinizing for the slightest deviation from her vision of perfection. She was the kind of person who saw imperfection as a personal affront. It was not long before she began her campaign of petty tyranny. Her initial salvo was a letter, meticulously typed and aggressively formal, informing me that my uncle's bridge was in violation of some obscure HOA guideline. Apparently, its rustic charm clashed with the aesthetic harmony mandated by the neighborhood code. I read the letter over coffee one morning, the steam rising in lazy curls as I pondered the absurdity of it all. The bridge was no blemish. It was a piece of understated beauty amidst the cookie-cutter precision of the neighborhood. I chose not to respond, hoping Karen would lose interest, her attention diverted by other matters of perceived importance. But Karen was nothing, if not persistent. A second letter followed, this time with threats of fines if the bridge was not promptly removed. I sighed, placing the letter with its predecessor in a drawer already filled with paperwork and forgotten things. Life continued. I spent late afternoons on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The bridge stood firm, a silent witness to the passing days and unyielding seasons. Karen's next move was more direct, a thinly veiled visit to discuss community standards. As she stood on my doorstep, I noticed the way her lips pursed into a thin line, a sure sign of disapproval. I listened politely, nodding in all the expected places while her words washed over me like a gentle yet persistent drizzle. Her threats hung in the air, but I knew their weight was feather light. I had no intention of removing the bridge. It was a part of my home, my history. Besides, beneath my outward calm, there was a steadfast resolve. Karen didn't know, couldn't know, that I was more than my placid demeanor, more than the unassuming resident she took me to be. The irony was almost amusing. In her quest for control, Karen had inadvertently stumbled into a realm far beyond her understanding. My uncle had once been a federal judge, his decisions shaping the lives of many. His bridge was more than wood and nails. It was a symbol of quiet strength and enduring legacy. As Karen left, her footsteps crunching on the gravel, I watched her retreating figure. Her crusade was far from over, but I knew the tides would soon turn. Her reign of petty tyranny would not last. The stage was set, the players in place, and I, the quiet observer, had a role yet to play. In the growing dusk, the bridge stood resilient and unyielding, just as I intended to be. The wind carried a crisp chill as leaves whispered secrets along the pavement. Karen's reign over the HOA was marked by precision, her rules etched in stone, unyielding and absolute. It was as if the bylaws were her personal gospel, each clause a divine edict she delivered with missionary zeal. In the aftermath of the bridge debacle, she escalated. The petty citations flowed like an unending stream. A stray weed, an unapproved garden gnome, the audacity of a slightly faded mailbox, all offenses in Karen's New World Order. She wore her authority like a crown, regal and untouchable. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, missed nothing. Every morning, she patrolled the neighborhood, her clipboard an extension of her will. Residents trembled at her approach, her presence a dark cloud, shadowing their peace. They whispered of her tyranny behind closed doors, yet none dared to confront her. A collective fear bound them, a silent recognition of the absurdity, yet an unwillingness to stand alone against it. And then, the gossip began. It slithered through the community with the stealth of a serpent, sowing discord and mistrust, whispers that my uncle's bridge was only the beginning, that soon Karen would dictate the color of our curtains, the height of our fences. Some said she even had plans for the stray neighborhood cats, to collar and tag them like livestock, a microcosm of her desire for control, to tame even the wild and free. In this theater of the absurd, I watched with a quiet detachment, a distant observer, yet intimately intertwined in the unfolding drama. My uncle's bridge had been a casualty, but there were other ways to rebuild, other ways to resist. The federal judge in him stirred, a quiet resolve igniting beneath the surface. I could sense it, a brewing storm masked by his calm demeanor. Karen's rules became ever more intricate, a web designed to ensnare. The community chafed under her edicts, but inertia held them captive. Apathy's chains are often the most binding, I mused, and in their complacency, Karen found her power. And yet, I waited. Patience was a virtue honed through years of navigating bureaucratic labyrinths. A time would come when the scales would tip, when the absurdity would crumble under its own weight. Until then, I let Karen play her game, let her stack the deck against herself. Days slipped into weeks, and the tension simmered beneath the surface. An undercurrent of quiet rebellion stirred. People began to question in hushed tones, their discontent murmuring like an approaching storm. They glanced at me, their eyes seeking a sign, an acknowledgement that they were not alone in their disillusionment. Karen, in her hubris, failed to notice, or perhaps she believed herself untouchable, a queen atop her self-constructed throne. But the higher the pedestal, the greater the fall. It was only a matter of time. The community held its breath, caught in the delicate balance between acquiescence and uprising, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of rebellion, I felt a quiet anticipation. The final act was yet to unfold. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the hardwood floor. The house was silent, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of birds outside. I sat at the kitchen table, my uncle's old leather-bound journal open before me. Its edges were worn, pages filled with meticulous notes in his precise handwriting. Memories of summers spent here flooded back fishing at dawn. The warmth of his stories, the bridge he'd built with his own hands, now reduced to rubble by a petty tyranny masquerading as community improvement. The HOA had overstepped, wielding authority like a blunt instrument. Their arrogance knew no bounds, and in their haste to impose order, they'd destroyed a legacy. But they had miscalculated. The land was federally protected, a fact I had quietly confirmed last night during a conversation with an old colleague. My uncle, with his sharp wit and love of intricate details, had ensured that the bridge was not only part of our family's heritage but also safeguarded by law. I turned back to the journal, its pages a testament to a life lived deliberately, each entry a window into his mind, filled with sketches and notes about the land he cherished. I could almost hear his voice, steady and reassuring, guiding me as I documented everything. Every email, every photograph, every interaction with the HOA captured meticulously, evidence for what was to come. The air was thick with the promise of rain. Clouds gathered like conspirators, their gray mass looming overhead. I picked up my phone and began composing an email, attaching documents, photographs, a scanned copy of the deed, each piece a stitch in the tapestry of my counter. The irony of it all was not lost on me. The HOA had sought power through destruction, And yet they had unwittingly handed me the very keys to dismantling their facade. Hours passed in a blur, the rhythmic tapping of keys echoing in the quiet room. As the afternoon light waned, I paused, stretching my fingers and glancing out the window. The world outside seemed unchanged, indifferent to the human drama unfolding within these walls. I took a deep breath and clicked send, my message a pebble cast into the still waters of a pond. Then came the waiting. Patience was its own form of power, a silent resilience that held its ground against the chaos. Days trickled by, each one marked by a quiet anticipation. I returned to my routines, the hum of daily life a comforting distraction, yet always with an ear tuned to the inevitable response. When it came, it was a single line, delivered with all the precision of a gavel striking wood, and offered to discuss misunderstandings and reparations, a feeble attempt to cover their tracks. The message was laden with irony, their bravado tempered by the realization of their folly. I smiled, a quiet satisfaction unfurling within me. The bridge may have been felled, but the battle for justice had only just begun. Their power was an illusion, and slowly, subtly, the tide was turning, not through confrontation, but through the quiet strength of truth. My uncle would have appreciated the poetry of it all. With a calm resolve, I began drafting my reply, each word carefully chosen, each sentence a deliberate step towards the resolution my uncle deserved. The skies outside darkened, a storm brewing, but inside, there was only clarity and purpose. The neighborhood had always prided itself on its pristine lawns and pastel facades, an enclave of order amidst the chaos of the world. But lately, a subtle tremor of unrest pulsed beneath the surface, like the low rumble preceding a storm. It started with whispers, curious glances exchanged over perfectly trimmed hedges. I noticed it, as I took my morning walks, a slight narrowing of eyes, the lengthened stares, dwelling on the spot where my uncle's bridge once stood. I could feel the weight of their curiosity, their need to piece together the puzzle of what had transpired behind the white picket fences. The bridge had been a simple testament to my uncle's quiet love for this place, a handcrafted connection over the small creek that meandered through his backyard, a sanctuary of tranquility in an otherwise bustling world. Its destruction at the hands of the HOA was the first crack in our neighborhood's veneer. I kept to myself, mostly, watching, waiting, from my front porch. I could see the neighbors in their daily routines, their smiles polite yet probing, as if my silence held the answers they sought. Beneath their civility lurked a quiet discontent. The HOA's actions had not only destroyed a bridge, but had also unleashed a hidden dissatisfaction with their authoritarian grip. The neighborhood knew me. They knew my uncle. But what they didn't know was the depth of our resolve. Their whispers grew louder, carried on the breeze like the rustling of leaves in early autumn. It was as if the air itself was charged with anticipation. I could feel it, a gathering storm, waiting for the right spark to ignite. On the surface, life continued as before. Lawns were mowed, cars washed, children played in the street. But beneath it all, tension swirled like an unseen current. The HOA's arrogance had not gone unnoticed. Their decision to dismantle the bridge, a seemingly innocuous structure, had unfurled a cascade of events they could not control. I strode through the neighborhood with quiet purpose, my movements unhurried, the calm eye in the center of a brewing tempest. My thoughts, though, were anything but calm, calculating, relentless. My mind a chessboard where moves were plotted with precision. They had underestimated me, mistaken my quiet nature for complacency. That was their first error. Neighbors began to approach, their inquiries thinly veiled beneath the guise of friendly concern. Their words were superfluous. It was their eyes that betrayed them, flickering with interest and, for some, a glimmer of shared defiance. I listened more than I spoke, allowing their questions to hang in the air, unanswered. The truth was, I owed them nothing, except perhaps the spectacle of what was to come. The turning point arrived subtly one afternoon. A meeting was called. Under the guise of discussing community landscaping, they gathered in the clubhouse, faces expectant, the hum of conversation a soft murmur that filled the space. I attended, not as a participant, but as an observer. It was then, in that room, that I noticed the shift. The HOA members stood at the front, authority etched into their posture, but their words faltered, met with a sea of skeptical expressions. Whispers of dissent coiled through the crowd, a serpent of shared frustration winding its way through the room. The irony was delicious. Here, in this curated cocoon of order and tranquility, the seeds of rebellion had taken root. They had not only severed a bridge of stone and wood, but had inadvertently begun to sever the bridges of trust that held this neighborhood together. I watched, silent as ever, my presence a specter of quiet defiance. The true power of a judge lies not in the gavel, but in the weight of their silence, the authority that commands without words. They had stirred a giant unknowingly, and now the neighborhood was beginning to awaken to the consequences. Anarchy was not my goal, justice was, and as the meeting drew to a close, I knew the time was drawing near. The tension had reached its crescendo, and soon the HOA would learn the true cost of their hubris. The early morning mist clung to my skin as I emerged from the house, the air heavy with an anticipatory quiet. My uncle's bridge, or the rubble it had become, lay down the path like a forgotten relic of a better time. It had been a few weeks since the HOA's brazen destruction, and the thought of it still stirred a hurricane of emotion beneath my otherwise calm exterior. I'd spent these weeks occupied with a quiet determination, moving like an unseen current beneath the surface. No raised voices or public confrontations, just the steady application of the law like a careful architect reconstructing justice from scattered stones. My connection to the federal judiciary was a well-kept secret, a card tucked neatly away until the right moment. Even my uncle, with all his wisdom and patience, had only caught glimpses of the path I had embarked on. Today, however, was the day those quiet strings I had been pulling would begin to unravel the tapestry the HOA had so carelessly woven. The first move had been to document everything: the remains of the bridge, the invasive machinations of the HOA, and the bewildering aura of authority they wielded like a bludgeon. Every interaction and every threat was noted, compiled into a dossier that revealed their overreach in stark relief. As I walked the path towards the remains, I remembered the meticulously crafted letters, each one a thread in the web I had spun. They were sent with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel to the right departments, the right people, whose influence stretched farther than the HOA's self-assumed power. The real beauty lay not in the letters themselves, but in their recipients, federal entities that took such transgressions seriously, the kind that turned whispers of illegality into a symphony of accountability. I imagined the members of the HOA, their arrogance a mask slipping by degrees as they received their own letters, gentle reminders that the land they tread upon wasn't merely subject to their whims, but to federal oversight and the rule of law. Each notice was a carefully placed mirror, reflecting their missteps with unyielding clarity. Standing by the rubble now, I let the symphony play out in my mind. I could sense the ripples of change beginning to stir, the unseen hand of justice nudging the balance back into equilibrium. It was a quiet revolution, not of noise or chaos, but of order and consequence. Even as I observed the scene, my phone vibrated with a message, a brief, understated update confirming that the federal agencies were now involved, their interest piqued by the audacity of the HOA's actions. A small smile played at the corners of my lips, a subtle acknowledgement that the wheel I had set in motion was gaining momentum. The HOA had underestimated me, underestimated the quiet resolve that often dwells behind unassuming facades. They had presumed power without the foresight to see beyond their narrow field of vision, and now they would learn that justice, though sometimes slow, is inexorable. I took one last look at the ruin where the bridge once stood, a silent promise, hanging in the air. Redemption would come, not in noise, but in the serene unraveling of wrongs made right. Walking back up the path, I felt the mist lift slightly, as if even the weather acknowledged the shift in the air. The morning after the board meeting was heavy with anticipation. The sky was brooding, a canvas of grays interwoven like the tangled mess the homeowners association had become. I walked through the neighborhood, the chill of autumn nipping at my skin. The air was crisp, a bitter prelude to winter, much like the atmosphere since the bridge's destruction. Karen had overstepped. Her vendetta against my uncle's bridge had been personal, vindictive, but the irony was not lost on her now. Not after learning that the man she tried to undermine was a federal judge. My uncle had always been a quiet presence, a gentle giant whose authority needed no announcement. It was only fitting that Karen's house of cards was crumbling silently around her. I passed by the site where the bridge had once stood, now a forlorn gap over the stream. The sound of rushing water filled the void, a persistent reminder of what was lost but would soon be restored. The bridge would rise again, like a phoenix from the ashes of Karen's misguided ambitions. Karen hadn't shown her face since the meeting. Her usual morning ritual of patrolling the neighborhood, a self-appointed guardian of a peace only she believed in, had ceased. The neighborhood felt different in her absence, a relief, a release, like a storm that had finally moved on, leaving the air clearer, fresher. I reached my uncle's house, the porch adorned with his peculiar collection of bird feeders swaying in the wind. He was there, of course, his serene presence a grounding force. He nodded as I approached, a silent acknowledgement of the world righting itself. The rebuilding process was already in motion. A team was surveying the area, plans in hand, the bureaucratic wheels turning swiftly under my uncle's guiding hand. He was a man who understood the value of patience, of letting justice unfold at its own pace. His quiet influence was setting things right, each step deliberate, each action purposeful. Karen's allies, once loyal, were scattering like leaves in the wind. The board was reeling, the power dynamics shifting. They had underestimated the quiet man next door. They had miscalculated the strength of a community that could rally together when injustice called. I watched as neighbors gathered around the site, a collective force intent on rebuilding more than just a bridge. They were mending trust, restoring faith in what a community could be. The irony of Karen's absence was palpable. She had sought control, but found herself sidelined, a spectator in a play she had once directed. As I stood there, the sun broke through the clouds, casting light on the stream. It was a metaphor too perfect to ignore, a promise of renewal. The bridge would stand once more, a testament to resilience and the quiet power of justice. The neighborhood was returning to itself, a place where laughter could echo across the water, where children could run freely, and where a quiet man could sit on his porch, content in the knowledge that the world had righted itself. And Karen. She was learning the hard way that sometimes the most profound lessons are taught not through words, but through the quiet, unyielding justice of consequences.